Participant in this event, Assemblyman Peter Lopez.
Well, thank you. I'd like to, I see we have a lot of new faces, so I have a story I'd like to tell you, and I've shared this when I first began this, and it's been almost 10 years now, participating in this event. It's very meaningful. The more opportunity we have to be together, I think over time it becomes more and more important to us. And I have to let you know, I was born in Miami in 1961, so I haven't lived in this area all my life, but most of my life. And my father, it was from Camoy, Puerto Rico, and he met my mother, Barbara May Skiff, who was from the Capital District in the late 50s. He had gone to from Puerto Rico to Florida in search of work to feed his family. His father had died from emphysema. They were struggling raising the family. He had 8 brothers and sisters, and they were subsistence farmers in the island. And so he came over to Florida in the late 50s as part of the Puerto Rican wave, looking for work and caring for his family. And he didn't know the language. His skin was dark, he had a mustache, didn't understand the cultures. And he worked his way, he learned the language, listening to people speaking in the restaurants and on street corners. And he met Barbara May Skiff, who had come to Florida to become an airline stewardess. That was her dream. And was working in the restaurant with him. And the two of them dated and eventually were married. And at that time, my mother, maiden name was Skiff. She was English, Scotch, Dutch, and German. So for our younger people at that time, this was in the middle of the civil rights movement in this country. And you'll read about that in your history if you haven't already. So for Barbara May Skiff, English, Scotch, Dutch, and German, to date, let alone marry a Puerto Rican, was something that was forbidden. And so I was born, Peter Denton Lopez, in Jacksonville Memorial Hospital in 1961. And a year later, my mother brought my father and me, baby Pete, to Schenectady. And at the time, Schenectady was different than it was now. It was more different cultures, but there were not many people of color in Schenectady. And my mother brought me in her arms and my father to the doorstep of Denton Skiff, who stood on the porch. And the words from Denton Skiff as they approached was, "You're not welcome here. He is not my son, and this is not my grandson." And that was our welcome into this region. The good side of the story is that I was the first grandchild. And so Denton Skiff, after his harsh words, began to realize that his daughter had given birth to his first grandchild. And regardless of whether the grandchild's last name was Lopez, and regardless of whether the husband had dark skin and a mustache, this was his family. And so Denton Skiff embraced Pedro Celestino Lopez, and embraced Peter Denton. And someone was handing out cigars, and back at the time, he was slapping his buddies on the back and very proud of baby Pete. Well, as we continued to grow, it was difficult. And I have to tell you, my father and my mother tried to minimize the culture. So some people would say, "Habla español, hace un poquito. Necesita practicar más." I know a little bit, but I need to practice more. So my parents, if you can imagine, tried to shelter us from the outside world, because the outside world didn't understand what it was like to be a Puerto Rican in the 1960s, early 1960s, in a monoculture. It was largely white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. And so they tried to protect us, so they minimized the language, they minimized the culture. When you went outdoors, you didn't speak Spanish, you dressed like everyone else. And they wanted us to fit in, and they did that to protect us, and that protected us to some extent. But I can remember on the streets in Schenectady, I can remember being spit on in my face. I can remember the name calling. I can remember being called a spick and all those things that we talk about, or you hear about, but you never really experience. And I guess what I'm driving at is we have a choice. And Dr. King had a choice, and everyone who deals with adversity has a choice. So we can either let adversity, our suffering, we can either let it harden us, or we can let it make us angry, we can let it make us bitter. Or we can gain strength from that adversity and use that suffering, use that weakness, use that test of endurance to make us stronger and more capable, more loving, but also as a testimony to others, to give them strength and encouragement. So I stand before you today to tell you that I choose life. I choose inclusion. I choose to be part of a community. I choose to engage. I could hide. I could be bitter. I could be angry. But I refuse to do that. And the writings and the life of Dr. King were just that. He said, engage. Do not hide. Do not be afraid of who you are. Do not be afraid to share your intelligence, your passion, your strength, your energy. Don't be afraid. Because it's easy to be afraid. Any one of us can be afraid or have been afraid in life. It's harder to stand up. It's harder to deal with the spit in the face. It's harder to deal with the verbal insults or the physical threats. So we're here tonight, and I'm glad to see this group here tonight, to commemorate Dr. King, but also to be a testimony to each other, because we gain strength from each other. And that's why we're here. Dr. King's life, in many ways, was Christ-like. And that's one of the reasons for suffering, is we wanted to see if we could become, and for those of our Jewish faith, to become more godly and take on the mantle of humility, take on the mantle of perseverance. And there's a song that we're singing, I'll just do a little piece of it. We use it to kind of commemorate the life of Christ. It's called Lord of the Dance. I'll try to do a little bit of it. My voice is a little husky, but bear with me. I danced on a Friday when the sky turned black. It's hard to dance with the world on your back. They buried my body and they thought I'd gone. But I am the dance and the dance goes on. Dance then, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. I'll lead you all, wherever you may be. I will lead you all in the dance, said he. Martin Luther King led us in a dance, and that dance continues, and that dance is for freedom, that dance is for equity, that dance is for growth, that dance is for peace. So we continue that dance tonight. Thank you. God bless.